Hi, everyone. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us today. We have a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is William, and for most of my marriage, I believed that love could fix anything. I adored my wife, Laura, from the moment we got married. I made it my mission to be the best husband I could be. I wasn't perfect, but I was always present. I listened, I provided, and I never hesitated to show her how much she meant to me. Whenever a problem arose, I believed we could talk it out and solve it together because that's what marriage is supposed to be, right? A partnership where two people work through challenges side by side. But let me tell you something. Belief means nothing when the other person has already checked out. Laura started pulling away gradually. She wasn't as affectionate as before. She avoided sitting too close to me on the couch. Our conversations became shorter, almost like she was just going through the motions. Then there was no intimacy at all. She always had an excuse. She was tired, she wasn't in the mood, or she had a headache. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who pressures his wife. So I gave her space, assuming she was just going through a rough time and needed time to figure things out. Like a fool, I did the only thing I knew how to do. I loved her harder. I planned dates, surprised her with little gifts, and constantly reminded her how beautiful she was. I told her how much I appreciated her. I wanted her to know that no matter what she was going through, I was there for her. But the more I tried, the more she pulled away. It was like trying to hold onto a shadow. The closer I reached, the further she slipped away. That's when I started asking myself a question I never thought I'd have to ask. How does a happy marriage turn cold overnight? One night, I finally decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. She had barely spoken to me all day. I turned to her, my voice steady but firm. "Laura, what's going on with you?" I asked. "You've been distant for weeks now. You barely talk to me. You don't even look at me the same way. Did I do something wrong?" She sighed, still staring at her phone screen as if she could avoid the conversation by pretending I wasn't there. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. "Laura," I pressed, "talk to me." Finally, she turned her head, and what she said next hit me harder than I ever expected. "I just don't feel happy anymore." That was it. No explanation. No reason. Just that. For a moment, I stared at her, waiting for more. Waiting for something that would make sense. "What do you mean you're not happy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "What exactly is making you unhappy?" She shrugged. "I don't know. I just feel this way." That was all she gave me. It felt like standing in the middle of a storm without knowing where the rain was coming from. I searched her face for something. Remorse, guilt, maybe even sadness. But there was nothing. Just a blank expression, as if she had already made peace with whatever this was. Meanwhile, I sat there, blindsided, trying to figure out how the woman I married, the woman I loved, had suddenly decided she wasn't happy. And the worst part? She couldn't even explain why. I asked again, desperate for clarity. "Is it me? Did I do something wrong?" She just shook her head. "It's not about you. I just feel like something is missing." I exhaled slowly, leaning back into the couch, my mind racing. If it wasn't me, if I hadn't done anything wrong, then what was it? And more importantly, how was I supposed to fix something she couldn't even put into words? The conversation dragged on, but it went nowhere. Every question I asked led to the same dead end. She didn't know. She just felt it. And that was that. Eventually, she sighed and stood up, saying she was tired. That was her way of ending the discussion. I watched as she walked off to the bedroom, leaving me alone in the dimly lit living room with nothing but a sinking feeling in my chest. That night, I felt more lost than I ever had in my life. How do you fight for a marriage when your wife won't even tell you what's wrong? In the following days, I stayed quiet and observed. One evening, my phone was dead and I needed to call a family friend. Laura's phone was on the couch while she was in the kitchen. Since I already knew her password, I unlocked it to find the number in her contacts. As I was searching, a message popped up. "What time did you get home last night?" For a moment, my brain struggled to process it. The sender? Her gym instructor. I replayed the events of the night before. Laura had told me, after coming home late, that she had visited a friend. Someone I knew. She had even mentioned her by name. But this message, it didn't match her story. Why would her gym instructor need to know what time she got home? Unless he was with her. I tapped on the chat. But when I opened it, there was nothing. No back and forth conversation. No context. Just that one message. It was clear this wasn't a random first text. It was a response. She had deleted the earlier part of the conversation. I put the phone back exactly as I found it. And I didn't say a word. Because I couldn't make sense of why. I didn't confront her. Not that night, not the next day. For weeks, I had been chasing her, trying to understand why she had become so distant. I had been bending over backward, trying to fix something that wasn't even broken. Because the problem wasn't me. She wasn't unhappy with our marriage. She was just happier somewhere else and needed an excuse. That night, after seeing the message from her gym instructor, something inside me shifted. I stopped wondering why she was acting this way. I stopped searching for explanations that didn't matter. Instead of trying to understand her behavior, I made a simple decision. I was done chasing. If she wasn't happy, I wouldn't beg her to be. I wouldn't complain. I just pulled back, the same way she had. But unlike her, I wasn't going to keep one foot in the marriage while looking for happiness elsewhere. I mentally removed her from my life. Now, I wasn't stupid. A woman who had already emotionally checked out and was possibly cheating would eventually convince herself that she deserved more. And by more, I meant half of everything I owned. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for the day she'd come home with divorce papers and a lawyer, expecting to walk away with my hard-earned money. So I moved fast. With the help of my lawyer and accountant, I transferred my assets, houses, land, anything of real value, into my mother's and relatives' names. I restructured my accounts, moving money around so that, on paper, I didn't have much to my name. I made sure that if she ever tried to take me to court, there wouldn't be anything worth fighting over. To the world, I was now a broke man. But in reality, I was just a man who had secured his future. With that taken care of, I adjusted my mindset. I no longer saw her as my wife. The woman in my house was just a roommate, someone I barely spoke to. I stopped waiting for her to come to her senses. I stopped caring whether she stayed out late or lied about where she was. As far as I was concerned, I had already lost her. Since she was no longer part of my future, I started living like she was no longer in my life. At first, I spent time outside just to clear my head. I'd go for long drives, sit alone at a cafe, just watching people. Then I started talking to strangers, to women, to anyone who wasn't Laura. And you know what? It felt good. I had spent so long trying to prove my worth to someone who treated me like an option that I forgot what it was like to be seen, to be wanted. So I let myself enjoy it. I flirted, nothing serious, just casual conversations. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like a man again. And Laura? She noticed immediately. She wasn't used to me being unavailable. Before, I was always there, always trying, always making sure she was okay. But now, I'd come home late without explanation. If she asked, I'd just shrug. If she wanted to talk, I'd keep it short. I wasn't rude, but I wasn't interested either. And I could see it bothered her. She'd watch me from across the room like she was trying to figure me out, like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. The power had shifted. Before, she was the one pulling away, leaving me desperate and confused. Now, it was me who didn't seem to care. And she hated it. I saw it in the way she suddenly tried to make small talk. The way she lingered in the doorway when I got ready to leave. She never said it outright, but I knew she wanted to ask where I was going, who I was with. But she didn't, because she knew she had no right to anymore. And that was the beauty of it. She had spent so much time making me feel like I wasn't enough. And now, for the first time, she was the one feeling unwanted. One morning, I woke up to the sound of Laura's voice, shrill and furious. At first, I thought I was dreaming. But when I turned over, she was standing at the edge of the bed, something clenched in her hand. Her face twisted in rage. It took me a second to process, then I saw it. An unused condom. "You got to be kidding me," she spat, shaking it in front of my face. So, now you're sleeping around? Is this why you don't care anymore? I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. If this had happened months ago, back when I still cared, I might have panicked. I might have scrambled for an explanation, tried to calm her down.
But now?
I just laughed. Not out of amusement. Out of pure disbelief at the absurdity of the situation. I leaned back against the headboard, looking up at her, completely unbothered. You've been sleeping with your gym instructor, I said, my voice even. And I never complained. So, why are you mad that I'm doing the same? Silence. For the first time in months, Laura didn't have a response. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something. But no words came out. She just stood there, frozen. Her anger stripped away, replaced by something else. Shock. Panic. It was the first time. She looked genuinely caught off guard. She wasn't expecting me to know. She wasn't prepared for this moment. I watched as her mind scrambled for an escape, for some excuse, some way to turn this back on me. But nothing came. And I wasn't about to help her. Instead, I delivered the next blow. I've been mentally prepared for divorce, I said, standing up, my tone casual. I'm just waiting for you to file. Laura's breathing grew shallow. She had just realized that the game had changed. And I wasn't playing anymore. Then I hit her with the final nail in the coffin. Oh, and don't expect a dime. The house? Not in my name. My bank accounts? You won't see a penny. Her mouth opened slightly, her fingers still clutching the condom packet, like it meant something now. I saw fear in her eyes. But I didn't care. I left her standing there and went to the kitchen for my morning coffee. The next few days were different. She wasn't cold anymore. If anything, she was the opposite. She lingered around me, trying to start conversations. She cooked meals she hadn't bothered to make in months. She asked about my day. It was pathetic. She was desperate, and I could see it in every little thing she did. Then one night, she sat beside me on the couch, her voice softer than I had heard in a long time. I don't want to lose you, she whispered, her fingers brushing against my arm. We can fix this. We can work through it. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. And I saw her for what she was. A woman who had thought she could do better. A woman who thought she had other options. Only to realize, too late, that she had thrown away something solid for nothing. Her gym instructor was never going to support her the way I had. It was probably just fun for him. He was never an option. And now she knew it. She wanted me to take her back. To forget everything. To reset the clock and pretend none of it had happened. But here's the thing. When a man truly stops caring, there's no going back. I looked at her for a long moment before finally speaking. You should have thought about that before. Then I stood up and walked away. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here, completely indifferent to my wife's tears, I wouldn't have believed you. I loved Laura. I built a life around her. Made plans for our future. Gave her everything I thought a good husband should. But love isn't just about what you give. It's about what's given back. And what I got in return. Coldness. Lies. Betrayal. I used to think that when a woman says she's unhappy, it means something is deeply wrong. Something that could be fixed if you just loved her more, tried harder, became better. But that's not always true. Sometimes I'm unhappy is just a mask for something else. In Laura's case, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about our marriage. It was about the excitement she was chasing outside. And when I stopped chasing her, when I stopped trying to prove my worth, she realized what she had thrown away. Stepping back changed everything. It showed me the kind of women who are out there, women who appreciate, who don't make love feel like a test, who don't demand half your soul just to give you scraps of affection. Being with them opened my eyes. It made me see that what I had with Laura wasn't love. It was control, disguised as commitment. And the moment she saw that control slipping away, she panicked. But by then, it was already too late, she panicked. Not because she was afraid of losing me, but because she was afraid of losing what I provided. I don't know if I'll divorce her yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But if that day comes, I'm ready. She thought she had me trapped. Thought she could take her time deciding whether I was worth her loyalty. But she forgot something important. I wasn't the one being tested.
She was.
And she failed. She introduced a game she thought she'd win. But in the end, she lost everything. Listen, when a woman pulls away and says she's unhappy but can't even explain why,
Don't beg. Don't argue.
don't break yourself trying to fix something that might not even be broken. Just step back, give her space, and watch what happens. Because the truth, it reveals itself when you stop chasing. Every single
Time.
And that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching and sticking with me through this story. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have handled things differently, or did I play it the right way? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this story eye-opening, make sure to like the video and share it with someone who needs to hear this. You never know who might need this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.